What if Canberra wasn't the sterile, sprawling and sleepy backwater we know today? What if, instead, Australia's capital had become a picture-perfect city of pale stone, terracotta roofs and blue domes? A walkable gem replete with vibrant streets and bustling piazzas, where grand yet approachable public buildings rise above a densely inhabited waterfront. A humane, people-centered vision, blending Mediterranean warmth, arts and crafts charm, and Neo-Byzantine grandeur, with a distinctly Australian character. This remarkable scheme was the brainchild of British architect and designer Ernest Gimson. Yet when Australia chose the design of its new federal capital, his proposal didn't even make the top 3. Now, more than a century later, we can finally see how Gimson's city and the rival visions it competed against could have looked today in stunning photorealistic detail, thanks to the magic of historically informed AI. This is the Canberra that might have been. In 1911, a decade after 6 separate British colonies united to create the Commonwealth of Australia, the young nation's federal government invited architects and planners from around the world to design an entirely new capital. The federal capital's location had been settled following intense rivalry between Sydney and Melbourne. The Constitution required the capital to stand in New South Wales, but at least 100 miles from Sydney. After numerous sites were considered, the Canberra district was selected in 1908. A scenic inland valley in southeastern New South Wales, it was chosen for its clean air, water supply, healthy climate, and natural beauty. The future city still had no official name. The public and politicians were invited to submit ideas, with hundreds of names ultimately suggested. The runner-up and public's choice was Austral or Austral City, with Hopetown and Myola the next favourite picks. But Canberra ended up as the winner, an anglicised local Aboriginal name meaning meeting place. The region had been home to the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples for more than 20,000 years. Few of the architects entering the competition would ever see the site themselves. Instead, they were supplied with maps, photographs and survey information, then asked to create a capital worthy of the new Commonwealth. Overseeing the contest was King O'Malley, Australia's flamboyant and strong-willed Minister for Home Affairs. The rewards were considerable, with £1,750 for the winner, which translates to over 200,000 Aussie dollars today, as well as £750 for second place and £500 for third. More controversially, O'Malley reserved the right to make the final decision after considering the recommendations of a 3-man judging board. Britain's leading professional bodies for architects and engineers objected to an unqualified politician acting as the ultimate adjudicator. They urged their members to boycott the competition. Gimson ignored them. Despite the controversy, 137 designs arrived from across the globe, offering radically different visions of what a modern national capital might look like. After narrowing the field to a short list of 46, the judging board announced its verdict in May 1912, but even its 3 members couldn't agree. The majority awarded first prize to Walter Burley Griffin, though the scheme was jointly created with his wife, Marion Mahony Griffin. She left her name off the submission, fearing the judges would dismiss the project if they saw a woman had worked on it, and her role has long been massively underplayed. The married couple's striking geometric scheme transformed Canberra's hills and valleys into a composition of sweeping axes and artificial lakes, but it was never fully executed. Here's how it was meant to look. Second place went to Finland's Eliel Saarinen. He opted for an imposing neoclassical capital with vast avenues and intimidating public buildings. Looking at this visualization, the overall effect anticipates the strict monumentalism favoured by fascist regimes during the 1920s and 30s. Third came the French architect Alfred Agache. He submitted an elegant Beaux-Arts plan featuring broad avenues, formal squares and richly classical architecture. Canberra would likely have been known as Paris Down Under had Agache won and his plan been executed. The board's chairman, John Cone, begged to differ. His first choice was the Australian design by Griffiths, Coulter and Caswell, a more traditional, grandly ordered capital peppered with old world style architecture. Although it received no prize, the government went on to purchase the scheme. The drama didn't end there. King O'Malley appointed a separate departmental board to examine the three prize-winning proposals and the purchased Australian scheme. Rather than adopting any one of them, it produced a compromise plan assembled from elements of several different entries. But after months of political wrangling, the Griffins' victory was ultimately upheld. The duo's design became the foundation of Canberra, but it was substantially altered over the years, and none of the Griffins' proposed buildings ever made it past the drawing board, partly due to cost limitations. Meanwhile, Gimson's remarkable alternative, which had made the shortlist of 46, slipped into obscurity. Exactly why the judges passed over Gimson is unclear, although the design's traditionalism, probable high cost, and lack of architectural detail likely counted against it. Born in Leicester in 1864, Ernest Gimson was championed by arts and crafts luminary William Morris before moving to the Cotswolds to help revive traditional crafts. Renowned historian Nicolaus Pevsner described him as the greatest of the English artist-craftsmen. Gimson died in 1919, 8 years after entering the Canberra competition. Most of what we know about Gimson's proposal comes from Professor John W. Reps of Cornell University and his landmark 1997 study of the competition. Andrew Cusack's excellent 2013 article later introduced the scheme to a wider audience and helped spark renewed interest in what he dubbed the most beautiful capital never built. Gimson's plan is best introduced through this watercolour bird's eye view, painted by his friend and fellow arts and crafts designer Alfred Hoare Powell and submitted to the competition. It shows a compact capital gathered around an artificial lake, with the cathedral on the left forming its striking visual focus and Parliament commanding the higher ground to the right. Around them spreads a dense network of government buildings, shops, offices, apartments, schools, squares and waterfront arcades, with a railway station, university, cultural institutions and hospitals nearby, factories on the outer edge, and a stadium across the water, all linked by trams and walkable streets arranged haphazardly. The effect recalls the ideas of Austrian urban theorist Camillo Zitta. Zitta rejected rigid, monotonous grids in favour of picturesque irregularity, mirroring how a historic city would have evolved naturally and organically. Now we can finally bring Gimson's Canberra to life and imagine it in the 21st century. Our tour begins on Kurrajong Hill, the commanding rise that several competitors reserved for the nation's most important public buildings. It was later renamed Capitol Hill. Gimson gave the summit itself to Australia's legislature, overlooking the artificial lake that would have been created by damming the Molonglo River below. 8 government departments are grouped around the main Parliament building, creating a vast administrative precinct of terraces, gardens and arcades. On the lower Camp Hill stands the State Hall, with the official residences of the Governor-General and Prime Minister and the principal institutions of the new Commonwealth in the vicinity. At ground level, the complex feels less forbidding than its immense scale might suggest, with sheltered walkways, landscape courtyards and broad approaches breaking architecture down to a more human scale. Instead of the severe neoclassicism favoured by many rival schemes, Gimson drew on the arts and crafts movement's growing fascination with Byzantine architecture, giving the quarter something of an exotic Eastern character. This was part of a wider turn-of-the-century Neo-Byzantine revival seen in buildings such as the Sacré-Cœur in Paris and Westminster Cathedral in London, where Gimson himself designed furniture and fittings. Gimson's fellow arts and crafts architect W.R. Letherby helped kick-start the craze with his 1894 study of Istanbul's Hagia Sophia. Gimson was also deeply inspired by his travels in northern Italy. Its churches and palazzos offered a rich vocabulary of domes, campaniles, and arcades. Those influences come together here. The clustered domes recall Venice's St. Mark's Basilica and Santa Maria della Salute, while the tall bell towers evoke nearby Torcello and the cities of Ravenna and Siena, which he also spent time in. The overall silhouette even looks rather like the Moscow Kremlin, though there's no evidence it was a direct source. Interestingly, the Australian War Memorial, built in Canberra in 1926, shares an uncanny resemblance with its pale local stone and Neo-Byzantine dome, but again, there's no evidence the two designs are connected. Gimson's submission reveals almost nothing about Parliament's interiors, so this imagined House of Representatives is an informed interpretation. Pale stone, timber, handcraft details, and ornate lanterns combine an arts and crafts aesthetic with the Neo-Byzantine character of the exterior. The result is ceremonial and dignified, but never cold or overly formal. Gimson's Parliament would have been especially dramatic from the water. Rising triumphantly over the city, the complex would have appeared to crown the landscape, its facades reflected in the lake and its glistening gold domes visible from almost every part of the capital. Leaving Parliament behind, we head northwest to Gimson's University Quarter. Arranged around a series of lawns and enclosed courts, it feels less like a single monumental institution than a cluster of colleges, with warm stone walls, terracotta tiled roofs, blue domes, and a tall campanile rising above the complex. At ground level, the double-domed main university building has a distinctly arts and crafts, almost medieval feel. Although Gimson never built anything on this scale, the design recalls Lupton Hall and the Memorial Library at Bedale School in Hampshire, his largest realised structures. It also shares similarities with his memorial hall to his mentor William Morris, and the houses and cottages for which he was better known. The Italian influence remains visible too. As is the case with the Parliament complex, the university's campanile recalls the aforementioned medieval towers of Torcello and Ravenna, while the blue domes continue the Venetian thread seen at Parliament. The result is a campus that feels grand enough for a capital, but still intimate, sheltered, and designed around everyday student life. Bidding farewell to the university quarter, we enter the city proper. This typical street features cafes and retail stalls boasting arcaded ground floors, with offices and apartments above. We next come to this charming public square, where enticing eateries and a traditional pub spill onto the pavement around a central fountain. These details are imagined, but they show how Gimson's architecture might have adapted to modern Australian life. Despite their Mediterranean appearance, these locales feel surprisingly compatible with Australia's famously relaxed outdoor culture. The red Marseille roof tiles are especially important. Sun-resistant, watertight and affordable, they were widely used in Australian architecture. The contrast of the red against the paler stone also mirrors the iconic outback palette of red iron-rich earth and the pale bark of the nation's gum trees. The facades require more interpretation. Powell appears to reserve the palest finishes for the monumental buildings, while ordinary streets vary in tone. Canberra's white limestone wasn't ideal as a building stone, and the city's oldest public building, St John the Baptist Church, which dates from the 1840s, was instead constructed from local sandstone and bluestone. Gimson's grandest buildings might therefore have used sandstone or other masonry beneath the pale lime render with warmer stones throughout the surrounding districts. Rather than transplanting a foreign Mediterranean town, Gimson was developing materials and forms already present in Australian architecture into a denser, more sociable capital, creating a unique Australian vernacular. Emerging from the web of everyday streets and piazzas, we arrive at the cathedral, the most prominent of the city's 10 places of worship. Rising above a dense quarter beside the lake, the cathedral was intended to form the visual focus of the entire capital. Powell's illustrations show a monumental church with massive twin towers, broad Romanesque arches, and a commanding position above the surrounding rooftops. This reconstruction imagines the cathedral in pale, lime-rendered masonry, approached by a staircase from a spacious public square. This part of town is also home to the General Post Office and National Theatre. From the cathedral quarter, we follow the capital's one great ceremonial route. Most of Gimson's roads form an irregular interwoven network, but this single straight formal avenue connects the parliamentary precinct with the city's spiritual centre. Midway are the National Museum and National Art Gallery and Library, situated on opposite sides of the street. Again, the lookalike buildings are faced in pale, lime-rendered masonry and feature Neo-Byzantine domes. Gimson planned for a city crisscrossed by trams, anticipating Canberra's modern light rail system, which finally began operation in 2019. After all that culture, it's time for some retail therapy. Continuing northeast, we reach Gimson's General Market, which he placed 15 metres above the lake, with a covered arcade of stalls enclosing an open square. The city's technical colleges occupied a projecting site closer to the water. In this imagined modern-day Canberra, the ornate market house has evolved into the capital's smartest shopping destination. Designer boutiques and upmarket high street brands fill its arcades, joined by independent Aussie makers and a Michelin-starred restaurant. On selected weekends, the square hosts a suitably polished, handmade Canberra market, while the former technical colleges have also been converted into shops and restaurants. No interior design exists, so this great shopping hall is an informed reconstruction. Its soaring arches, handcrafted lanterns, warm stone, and blue glazed dome combine Gimson's arts and crafts sensibility with the Neo-Byzantine character seen throughout the capital, imagining how the old market might have been adapted. From the market, we continue down towards the lake. Rather than separating the centre from its shoreline with empty parkland, Gimson proposed homes, schools, shops and more along a densely inhabited embankment, with mini islands jutting out. Running along the embankment is one of the plan's most distinctive features, a covered colonnade 6 metres wide, extending for pretty much the entire length of the waterfront. The feature is both picturesque and highly practical, providing shade from the fierce summer sun, shelter from the rain, and creating a lively public waterfront rather than an ornamental lake admired only from a distance. At the far northeastern edge of the capital, beyond the railway station, Gimson placed the marshalling yards, power station, gasworks, cattle market and factories. He deliberately positioned the industrial quarter so that the prevailing winds would carry pollution away from the main city, with a small garden suburb nearby for its workers. In this alternate history, the factories gradually declined as Canberra's economy changed. Empty workshops were first occupied informally by artists and craftspeople, before the neglected district was rediscovered and transformed into a fashionable neighbourhood of pottery studios, furniture workshops, galleries, independent restaurants, microbreweries and loft apartments. There's actually a striking real-world parallel in the Yarralumla brickworks, which dates from 1913 and was recently repurposed as a heritage-led mixed-use development. For all its beauty, Gimson's proposal would have presented formidable difficulties. An entire capital built through traditional craft techniques, finely detailed masonry and bespoke joinery would have been extraordinarily expensive and slow to complete. Though offset somewhat by better public transport, its narrow streets and enclosed squares might later have struggled with cars, congestion and parking. Present-day Canberra is not without its major strengths. The city is exceptionally green, with abundant parks, nature reserves and tree-lined suburbs, as well as clean air, low crime, excellent museums and a generally high quality of life. The Griffins' original vision was also repeatedly modified, so the city's present shortcomings cannot simply be blamed on the couple's design. But the low-density layout has made the population hugely reliant on cars, and the ACT Sustainability Commissioner's 2025 Close to the Edge report warned that continued greenfield expansion was damaging habitats. It urged the city to prioritise development within its existing footprint. The low-density layout also makes the city feel strangely empty for a national capital. Canberra can appear like a ghost town even when Parliament is sitting and students are in term, while recesses and university holidays drain still more life from its streets. It lacks the buzz of Sydney, Melbourne and numerous other Aussie cities, and the capital's architecture is seen by many as sterile, detached and uninspiring. Gimson offered the opposite experience, a compact tram-served city where homes stand close to retail, workplaces and institutions. Its welcoming piazzas, markets, arcades and waterfront would have encouraged walking, chance encounters and a much livelier public life, potentially reducing both social isolation and car dependence. Density did not mean an absence of greenery. Gimson's plan allocated plenty of green space despite its compactness, and that compact footprint would have also placed less pressure on the surrounding bush, required shorter roads and utility networks, supported a more comprehensive tram system and used significantly less water. The plan wouldn't have prevented future suburban growth, but it would have made for a much less spread out city. Stone lime render and terracotta tiles, plus fewer homes on exposed fringes, could also have reduced bushfire risk over the course of the city's history. Gimson's Canberra plan isn't perfect. It would have been extremely expensive and difficult to adapt to cars, but it would also have been more walkable, more sustainable, more fireproof, much prettier, livelier, and unmistakably human. Unlike the city of today, Canberra would be the nation's jewel and no doubt a major tourist destination. The Griffins gave Australia a sprawling vision, spread across the landscape. Gimson would have given it a vibrant, soulful heart, a Canberra not just for the government, but for the people.